Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of session 3 of module 4, specification based or black box techniques. In part 2 of specification based or black box test design techniques, we will learn about decision table testing. So let's understand what is decision table testing. So before going into details of decision table testing, let's understand what decision table is. So a decision table shows different combination of inputs with their associated outputs. This is also known as cause-effect table. So in decision table, you have different combinations of inputs. So you have, suppose you have condition 1, condition 2, and based on the changes in those conditions, your outcome is defined, your outcome changes. So in decision table, you have different combinations and your output is dependent on the conditions, on the outcome of those conditions. So that's why it is also known as cause-effect table. And decision table is made up of conditions, which are kind of inputs, and the actions or outcomes of those input conditions. Then decision table testing is used if different combinations of inputs results in different actions. So if different combinations of inputs result in different actions, then you use decision table testing in such kind of situations. So for example, you are having say a mortgage calculator in which you enter the amount, you enter your tenure, and you enter your rate of interest. So based on the changes in these conditions, in these three conditions, your output, your processed EMI is affected. All right, your equated monthly installment is calculated based on these three input conditions. And so in this kind of scenarios, you need to use decision table testing. We will take this example in much detail in later slides. So decision table is more efficient in testing business rules. So whenever you are testing some business rules which are dependent on different conditions, you need to use decision table testing. Then decision table provides a systematic way of stating complex business rule, which makes it very helpful. So whenever you have like complex business rules, you can have it in the form of different conditions, and based on that conditions you can identify what will be the outcome of that business rule. And because of that, it becomes very easy when you are using decision table to identify those business complex business rules. And decision table aids in systematic selection of effective test cases and helps in finding any ambiguities in specification. And if you are doing if you have some modules in your software which are dependent on different combinations of inputs, for which the outcome is dependent on some combination of inputs, then in that kind of scenarios you can have a decision table and list all those conditions or inputs and list the outcome of those conditions, and that way you can figure out if all the combinations or all the conditions or inputs are being captured and the relevant outcome for those conditions has been captured in the table. If there is something missing in the table, that means there are ambiguities in the requirement which you can clarify. So let's see what decision table looks like. So here is the decision table wherein you have conditions, condition 1, condition 2, and based on the input for the conditions you have the outcome. So outcome 1, outcome 2, or the actions are dependent on the inputs for the condition. So each condition is set to show the input condition and are usually set to true or false. So each condition can be either true or false, and then for each condition the output is determined. So based on different input for the conditions, the outcome is determined or action is determined. So each column in decision table represents a unique business rule, and so it is a test case. So if you see here, there are two conditions, and based on two conditions there will be four different combinations of those two conditions. So there are four test cases possible for this these two conditions. And so each column, test case 1, test case 2, test case 3 and test case 4, is a test case for your testing. So using decision table for test design, the first task to design decision table is to identify the component or system which reacts according to the combination of inputs. So the very first thing in decision table testing is to identify the component in the system, in the software, which reacts based on different combination of inputs. Alright, so if there is any component which has certain conditions, and based on the inputs on different conditions, if the outcome is varied, then that's the module which you need to test using decision table testing. For example, the mortgage calculator, you enter the loan amount, you enter the loan the rate of interest, you enter the tenure, and based on the different conditions of these three values, the outcome, that is the processed equated monthly installment, is varies. So you need to test you need to use decision table testing in such kind of modules, wherever you find such kind of modules which are affected by different inputs, which are affected by inputs of different conditions. So do not deal with large number of conditions all at once. Divide them into smaller subsets and test one subset at a time. So if there are many conditions, so do not try to form a decision table with 10 different conditions. You need to divide it into smaller 2 to 3 conditions at a time in a module, and then test the subset, one subset at a time, and not all included in one. Otherwise you will end up in like hundreds of different test cases with different conditions. So that's not feasible. So you need to divide it into a smaller subset and test one subset at a time. And once the conditions for component are identified, then they are put in a table listing true and false for each aspect. So once you get the conditions, then you put it in the table and you identify the input either as true or false, and then test the output or outcome accordingly based on the input conditions. So let's take an example to understand it. So let's take an example of loan EMI calculator to understand decision table testing. The test condition for loan EMI calculator can be loan amount or repayment term. So repayment term can be 20 years, 25 years, and the loan amount. So these are the two very simple things that we considered in loan EMI calculator. So the empty decision table for this example will look something like this. So you have two conditions here, repayment amount entered and repayment term entered. So if repayment amount entered, yes. Repayment term entered, yes. So you'll be having like 4 conditions, 4 different combinations of these conditions. So we have 4 columns, rule 1 or test case 1, rule 2 or test case 2. So let's see what will be the input for the different test cases here. So if you see here, so in loan EMI calculator, if the has the repayment amount entered, if it is true, or repayment term entered true, then process loan EMI. Then it will, because in loan EMI calculator both the quantities are required or necessary. If any one of them is missing, then it might fail to process. So in the first case here, amount entered true, term entered, process loan EMI, yes. In the second case, amount entered, repayment term entered, false. So we are not sure what the outcome should be. Similarly, amount not entered, false, amount entered, false, or a term entered, true. We are not sure here. Or if both the fields are false, what will happen? All right. So in the above table, we are not clear about the outcome for rule 2, 3, and 4. So we are not sure what the outcome should be in the in these three different rules. So if we are not clear, that's where ambiguities can be resolved. So you can ask from the business stakeholder or business analysts what will be the outcome or action when we don't enter the repayment amount. We enter the repayment amount but not the term. We enter the term but not the repayment amount, or we do not enter both. So what will be the outcome in that case? And then you can remove those, resolve those ambiguities. So we can, for now, we can assume that both conditions are mandatory for processing the loan. So the modified decision table will look like something like this. So if both of them are mandatory, then definitely if any one of them is missing, then there should be proper error message being displayed that you need to enter both the conditions in order to get your loan EMI processed. So the modified decision table will look like, if both of them are true, then process loan EMI. If any of them is missing, then proper error message should be displayed. So here both of them are missing, then error message is displayed, yes. If amount is missing and term is entered, then error message is being displayed, should get displayed. And if amount is entered but term is missing, then error message should get displayed. So that's how you remove the ambiguities as well. If you're not sure, you can ask business analyst or other stakeholders what will be the condition in case some of the rule or some of the conditions are changed, or what will be the outcome for different combinations of conditions. Now let's take another example, the live example. So mortgage calculator example. So here are the test cases, and so you need to go to this URL, yourmortgage.com.au/calculators. And so here, if you see, so here is the loan amount. If you enter the loan amount and the interest rate and the loan period and then calculate, so it gives you your like monthly repayments, your weekly repayments and everything, right? But if you go back and you do not enter this, it should say the missing field interest rate. If you remove years, it should give you error that loan missing field interest rate, missing field loan period. So these are the outcome. This is your outcome. This is the outcome, and these are the input conditions. So how many conditions are here? Loan amount is the first condition, interest rate is the second condition, and loan period is the third condition. So if first condition is true and second and third are false, then you get an output, then you get an error. If all of them are true, then it gets processed successfully. Then you get loan amount, your equated monthly installment processed successfully. But if any of them is missing, then it should give you proper error message. So let's go ahead and see the table, what test cases can be possible in this case. So if all of them were present, then the result was success. EMI will be calculated successfully. But if loan period is missing, there will be error message. And what error message? Loan period missing. In case interest rate is missing, then there will be error message. And what error message? Enter interest rate. If both interest rate and loan period is missing, then there will be error. It should not process, it should not go ahead, and error, enter rate and period. Then if loan amount is missing but interest rate and loan period are present, then it should give error. What error? Enter loan amount. So similarly for missing loan amount, missing loan period should give you error, enter loan amount and loan period. And if everything is missing, and it should again give an error. So here you see there are 3 conditions, and based on 3 conditions there will be 8 test cases, and you need to test all these 8 test cases, and you need to verify that for every missing condition, for all the conditions, all the different conditions, you get proper either success message with equated monthly installments or an error message with proper error displayed for whichever conditions are missing. So if interest rate and loan period is missing, then it should give you a proper error message stating that interest rate and loan period is missing. So you can just go to this URL and use this decision table to test to test these different test cases. So in this kind of modules that we have seen in mortgage calculator, because you have different conditions, and based on the conditions you were getting different outcomes. So in such kind of conditions, such kind of modules, decision table testing is very handy, and you should always use decision table testing. So to conclude, in this session we'll learn about decision table testing, and we saw live example using mortgage calculator and how you can use decision table effectively to test modules which vary based on different conditions, for the output of those modules which vary based on different conditions. So you can go ahead to the mortgage calculator URL that is shown, that we have discussed in previous slide, and practice decision table testing. Thank you.